Hey, Travis here at Exerciselab with another video for you guys today. I've reviewed a lot of products over the years, and I see a lot of people on the internet doing that. Obviously, I'm not the first person to do any product reviews on exercise equipment. But what I don't see a lot of these people doing is sort of a recap. What are they still using after a while? That stuff still on the shelf? Is that stuff something that's pretty much part of the routine, and they're doing it on a weekly basis at least? And so I wanted to bring that to you guys today because obviously, again, I've spoken to a lot of different things. And so, what do I personally use, for myself and for other people? What's kind of stood the test of time, in other words, and what things have I maybe, put on the shelf and maybe has stayed there for a while, built up a few cobwebs, maybe even, or I just use, less frequently. And so, I just wanted to go ahead and bring that to you guys today as kind of a nice way to cap off the year, maybe even start the new one. And so, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that stuff, go ahead and stay tuned and we'll get started. All right, so first off, I want to talk about grip, and grip training devices. I've spoken a lot about grip on this channel, and so what's stuck around, I've used these calves handles. I talked about the Saxon grips by Abmat, certainly the fat grips, which are sort of the OGs, so to speak. And then recently I reviewed this, chemically radically engineered grip enhancer. This is a newer product for me, at least. I know it's been around for a little while, but I kind of resisted getting it because it was a little more expensive. But I really have been liking it, actually, and I've been using it quite a bit. So this one's going to stay for at least the time being. Have been using this quite a bit. With respect to these grips, I kind of did this video on Saxon grips knowing this is kind of a novelty item. I do think it is a cool way to challenge your grip. How often do I use it? I'd say occasionally. It's probably something I mess around with, every now and then, maybe, once a month, maybe even twice a month. Typically towards the end of a workout, if I'm just trying to get a little extra grip strength, I'll put a band on it, maybe do some exercises that way. Maybe even I'll just kind of do some tricep stuff, just trying to look at a different way to challenge my grip. But it isn't a mainstay of my routine. So I'd say I'd put this on the infrequently occasional. It's definitely a novelty item, but it is a cool in the sense that there aren't a lot of ways to challenge your grip in kind of this pinch style fashion as much. So, if you're somebody who's interested in doing that, go ahead and get it. It is a cool product. One of my caveats is it is pretty tough to get on the bar. That's not why I don't use it, though. It's just, one of these things where, there's only so much hours in the day, and I challenge my grip primarily actually using these other devices. Calves handles, I'd say I use a little bit more frequently. That's this thing by Prime Fitness. It's kind of got a cylindrical handle, but it's a little bit tapered, as you can see. I actually like using it sort of the opposite way they recommend. They tell you to sort of do this for this conical grip. Sometimes I actually will do it like this, which is what I showed in the video. I play around with it. I like to, you can just attach it to a cable, fits on there pretty nicely. I don't do a lot of the single stuff where, they say you can take one end off and, you basically can use it, kind of like this. I don't do a lot of that type of stuff. I tend to use it more just as a thicker handle for some pulling movements. And so I'd say I use this again also occasionally, maybe a little bit more though than the Saxon grip by Abmat. So this one again, somewhat of a novelty item, but pretty cool for those of you who are in the market for it. But again, it is a bit more on the pricey side. The one I'd have to say I use the most is definitely the fat grip. These newer ones are really easy to get on. It's got a pretty good diameter on it. Again, these are the Gripz Extreme. The fat grip normal ones are the blue ones. I use those as well. And again, these ones are not terribly expensive. They're typically, they've gone up a bit over the years, but you can still grab these for around the $30-ish range. And I think they're just great. I use this a lot. I'd say I use these on a weekly basis for sure, usually a couple of times a week, whether I'm doing dead hangs, and I spoke to, ways to challenge your dead hangs a little bit more than just grabbing a normal bar. I use them, for all kinds of pull-up variations and things of that nature. Sometimes even just, doing some leg lifts, working the abs. I like using these a lot. And so these ones definitely I would recommend. And again, the cool thing is they're not terribly expensive. So overall, fat grips get my win for the grip training devices as far as how often I use it. And so that's there for you. All right, so next category would fall into sort of recovery devices, devices that maybe can enhance or augment, training gains. And so, with that, I spoke to this device called the Mark Pro, which is effectively just an e-stim unit. It uses the proprietary waveform, which, the guys at Mark Pro say is a non-fatiguing waveform. And so you can do this a bit more frequently without worrying about it hampering your gains, which, as an athlete, you're certainly worried about because there is a point of diminishing return. And so you want to be getting, all the emphasis on the gains and not really wasting energy doing things that aren't meaningful. So I've used this thing a bit. I had a nagging shoulder injury this year. I kind of self-diagnosed it, didn't get an MRI. But I think I had a supraspinatus tear on my right shoulder. I would plug this in a lot of times in the evening if I was, clicking away on the keyboard, doing something kind of mindless. And I did use it fairly frequently during the week for that injury. I also had a kind of nagging little patellofemoral thing this year as well. I also tried using it for that. I would say that it seemed to help a bit with the shoulder issue. The shoulder issue is mostly better now. Sometimes those tears can just be kind of slow and stubborn to heal, but it's definitely a lot better than it had been. How much this thing helped is hard to say. Bringing in extra blood flow and circulation though to an injured area, I don't think is a bad thing. And so this, at least had the theoretical basis to do that. Whether or not I'd say go out and get one of these if you have that kind of injury, I also use this, with other people as well sometimes. And, so for me, it kind of justified the price point. But again, I'd say this was probably icing on the cake. Maybe it helped a little bit, unclear. Didn't help with my patellofemoral pain very much, unfortunately. That's kind of a harder area, I would say, in general, though, to get to. And I think that was more of a mechanical thing. So as far as the Mark-Pro, I'd say, yeah, maybe, it might have done a little something for me there. Jury, I'd say, is still somewhat out on it, but, not a bad thing if you happen to have it already laying around. I don't know that I'd recommend going out and getting one specifically, though. What actually ended up helping my knee, which, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to shoot the video this year, but upcoming video I will. The Normatec, actually, which is kind of a sequential compression device that kind of helps with just getting that venous return going. They use them in lymphedema, smaller ones called SCDs in the hospital. I'll review that product at some point this upcoming year. That actually did seem to help somewhat with my knee. Among other things, of course. I didn't do any one thing exclusively. So that seemed to help with that issue. But that's, again, my 2 cents on the Mark-Pro. This was another thing, too. I got these smart cuffs this year, and I reviewed this earlier this year. They're pretty cool. I was excited to get these. It's definitely got the theoretical basis as far as, getting that limb occlusion pressure dialed into the right amount. It syncs up with an app on your phone and continually reinflates to keep that constant pressure. It's got these thick bands. So, it checked off a lot of boxes off the list, as I mentioned in the video. One thing, though, is it just is a little cumbersome. Bluetooth pairing still leaves a bit to be desired. It wasn't horrible. I could definitely get these to connect. But, the fact that you have to always, fire these up, it's kind of a to-do. And so ultimately, I'd have to say, this year I used just these off the shelf, kind of Amazon BFR bands. These things are like, 10, 15 bucks. And I would throw these on a lot more than I actually ended up using these. And I think part of the reason is it's just convenience. If I'm, throwing this on at the end of a set or sorry, at the end of a workout towards the end to get a little bit extra, that, that pump, so to speak, I think this is great. Even sometimes as a warm-up, or even we're coming back from that shoulder issue, sometimes I'd throw these on, warm up, get a little extra blood flow, maybe, at least in theory. Obviously, it's going to include it initially, but then, the after effect is it's going to keep more blood in the area. But I use the BFR bands a lot. I actually, there are the elastic ones too, which, in theory, you don't want something too elastic. That rigidity is helpful. So for me, though, again, I understand that limb occlusion pressure, getting it to that level that I want, because I've used these, I know what it feels like. And so I can kind of ballpark it pretty effectively with these. It's a little more of a shot in the dark, I'd say, for somebody who's never used BFR at all. So I think this is a nice education tool. It can kind of teach you what it should feel like, at that, recommended amount of occlusion pressure, which, I'd recommend you guys go back and check out that video, because I'm not going to necessarily speak to all that right now. So if you're new to this, you don't really know what it's supposed to feel like, I think this is going to be a great training tool. Once you're there, though, you know what it's supposed to feel like. Again, I just love the convenience of these. Ultimately, again, there's only so many hours in the day, and you have to think to yourself, how much time do I really want to spend on each one of these things? And for me, it's just not a lot. And so I actually end up using these BFR bands, which, again, kind of the funny thing, which is in keeping with my Fat Grips. This is one of the least expensive tools as well. It's not as expensive as some of this fancier stuff. So, it just speaks to that fact that you don't always have to spend a lot of money to get after yourself, in some pretty effective ways here. I didn't speak to like the Kinnean or some of these red light devices also. Didn't get enough hours in the day to do a video on that. My, again, experience again with that is maybe with some more superficial stuff, it seemed to help a little bit more. I used it with some people for different elbow things and things of that nature, a little epicondylitis, and maybe it helped. Again, I didn't use that thing exclusively, though, so once again, it's hard to say. Was it maybe because I hadn't used the flex bar, which I also spoke to earlier this year on the channel? It probably had more to do with that, I would say, than using some red light on them. So that's pretty much my 2 cents on these, sort of recovery and, potentially performance enhancement type tools. Really what BFR does is it just kind of lowers the bar. I would recommend going back to that video, though, for sure, if you want to learn more about it. I spoke to it at length on why you might want to get into it. But, I would say you can do yourself pretty good justice with these cheap ones. And again, that's what I've been using this year. So there's that. All right, so one of the last categories would be barbells. And it sort of goes without saying that, barbells, dumbbells, bands, exercise bike. I mean, those are the mainstays of my routine. So in this video, I'm really talking about kind of those extras, the things you might not have laying around per se. I have to say the Tsunami bar was actually a real friend of mine this year. I used it quite a bit. Again, I said I was dealing with a little bit of that shoulder issue. The fact that it's a bit unstable kind of has that whip effect, which I would recommend you guys watch the video if you're interested in seeing how that works. I really liked that a lot, actually. I liked the fact that I was just away, at least psychologically also. I felt like I didn't have to go as heavy, which, for a lot of the meatheads, I feel like is an important thing, because you feel like, oh man, I'm not lifting as much, I'm gonna lose all this strength. And so, when I put weight on this bar, because it had that additional instability factor, I just didn't feel like, okay, I can kind of justify the fact that I'm not lifting as much as I had been. And for me, again, that was helpful. I definitely think it allowed me to probably get back to benching a little bit quicker. In addition to that, which I did speak to, actually I didn't speak to in the video I meant to review this year, and I actually didn't. I used a slingshot quite a bit as well. So I'm not going to necessarily give it a thorough review here, but a slingshot I thought was a great device also, just to kind of help maintain a nice groove. Maybe give me a little assist out of the bottom where I was getting some kind of twinginess in my shoulder. The slingshot was great. The Tsunami bar was great, and so they definitely have been staples in my routine. I pretty much have been using this Tsunami bar, I'd say just about once a week, certainly every other week, and this bar has been great for me, so I really enjoy it, and I would say in that sense it probably would justify the price point for somebody who's looking to get some of the benefits out of it that you can get from this. That differs a little bit from a conventional barbell. Other bars, notably, I did review the Transformer X bar, which unfortunately that bar has probably stayed on my shelf a bit more than I was hoping it was going to. I was very excited about it. That bar did not necessarily do it for me as much as I was hoping, but I do use the more tried and true Transformer bar there in the back, more the OG. I think it's a great bar, kind of mix it up, change the angles a little bit, give your body a little bit of a novelty kind of stimulus. So that one's been a staple of my routine, the original Transformer bar. I also like the Kabuki trap bar. I didn't get a chance to review that product this year, but upcoming year 2025, it will be in the works. I do like that bar a lot, and so I've been using the trap bar as well. So in the bar department, again, Tsunami, Transformer, the trap bar, those are part of the bars in addition to conventional barbell that I've been using quite a bit and that I've been liking a lot. All right, so that's pretty much it for today. I just want to talk to you guys about some stuff that, again, I don't see a lot of people doing, which is what I'm still using now. Everyone tries to get a new product. They want to be the first person to kind of put a video out on it. And, I'm guilty of that too, obviously, with the Transformer X, because I knew people were going to be excited about it, and I was. But, again, I think it speaks to what are you still using that really says, what actually does work. And so those are the things that I'm still using. And, it certainly bears mentioning that people have built great physiques without any of this stuff. A lot of those old school guys just had, some crappy dumbbells laying around, a barbell, maybe a pulley system if they were lucky. And, they built up a great physique. And, a great physique is not necessarily the holy grail of fitness. There's a lot of guys who, at least appear to be very fit on the internet. And I would say are probably not, not the least because they're using different, performance enhancing drugs. Maybe they're even doing training practices that are going to probably catch up to them later on. And so the idea is, what's new, what's coming on the scene that maybe gets us there without paying such a high price. And, as far as, are they joint sparing? Are there other ways I can kind of challenge myself? Maybe some advantages I can get from a rehab perspective if I'm coming back from an injury. And so I just want to speak to that on this channel. And that's kind of what I try to do this year. Obviously, anything that's coming up, though, I will be on the lookout for 2025. And certainly, if you guys have any recommendations, certainly let me know, things you want me to review. Please subscribe if you like this stuff. I hope you guys had a great 2024. And if it wasn't great, well, then, hey, let's make it great in 2025. It's always a good day to have a good day, I like to say. And I hope you guys have some fun. Happy holidays from Exerciselab.